Let's start with price. Price seems very fundamental to a contract, right? And in a common law contract, if the parties have not agreed on a price, then there's no contract. But under the UCC, if the parties did not agree on a price, a court will find that there is a contract and will substitute a reasonable price based that exists at the time of the delivery. Now, this reasonable price is almost invariably based on market value, fair market value for the item. We are going to substitute this missing term, this open term of price, with what is the market value. Also, custom. What is a custom in the industry? What do products of this nature typically cost? And so even though we have this missing term, this price term is missing, which would be fatal to a common law contract, in a UCC contract, the court will supply a price. The law will supply a price. The market value of the good becomes the price. Now, if one of the parties is permitted to set the price, meaning the price is not included in the contract, but one party has the ability to do so, that party must act in good faith, must perform in good faith in setting that term. What about payment? Contract missing payment terms. How is payment to be made? Again, if there is a missing term regarding payment, rather than invalidating the contract, a court will look to the UCC. What does the UCC have to say about payment? Well, if the parties do not specify otherwise, payment is due at the time and the place that the buyer receives the goods. That's the default rule. The time and place the buyer receives goods. If there is a test problem and there is an open term regarding when is payment to be made, you must be able to recognize that payment is due at the time and place that the buyer receives the goods. If this contract is silent as to what form of payment should be made, the buyer can tender payment using any commercially acceptable means. What is a custom in the industry? How is payment usually made? Is it made on a cash basis? Is there a credit term? Is there the use of credit cards? Whatever is commercially acceptable. Now, if the seller demands payment of cash, the buyer must be given a reasonable time to obtain it. Meaning the contract is silent. The seller can demand payment in cash, but must give to the buyer a reasonable time to obtain it. What's a reasonable time? It's going to differ depending on the type and the nature of the parties involved in the transaction. What about a delivery term? Open delivery term. If the contract does not provide for rules regarding delivery, the UCC will supply those rules. The UCC provides delivery terms if the contract is silent. For instance, if the parties do not specify the place of delivery, the buyer must take delivery at the seller's place of business. So again, how does this appear on your test? There's a situation, there's a contract that has a missing delivery term, and I ask, where does the delivery take place? If the parties have not specified the place, the buyer will take delivery at the seller's place of business. If the parties do not specify the time of delivery, the seller will deliver within a reasonable period of time under the circumstances. And again, it must be reasonable, meaning I cannot simply require you to appear at 2 a.m. to take delivery of the goods. What would be a reasonable time? 7 a.m., 8 a.m. Those are the kind of things that are reasonable. Duration. What if a contract is silent as to how long it's going to last? We enter into a contract, I'm going to provide you with fresh vegetables from my farm for your grocery store. And we agree that I'm going to deliver the vegetables on the 1st of the month and you are going to pay me on the 15th of the month. And we don't say anything about how long does this contract last. How long are the parties bound to the terms of the contract? Well, where a term is not specified, a duration term is not specified, either party can terminate, but they must provide reasonable notification. Reasonable notification in this case would essentially be what have the parties done in the past. So where the term is not specified, either party can terminate, but only after reasonably notifying the other party of the decision to terminate. If you normally take those delivery of the goods on the 1st of the month, it's not reasonable to say on the 31st of the previous month you call to say, I'm not going to take delivery of those goods tomorrow. I will not pay you for the goods you deliver tomorrow. Instead, there must be a month period would be reasonable, right? On the 31st, you notify them that on the 1st of the month following, then you are not going to take delivery. So, open duration term. Open quantity term. And again, quantity is usually a term that's necessary to create an enforceable contract. And this is true under both the common law and the UCC. However, when it comes to quantity, the UCC recognizes two exceptions. And the first is what's called a requirements contract. A requirements contract is an agreement in which the buyer agrees to purchase all or up to a stated amount of what the buyer needs or requires. So for instance, a grocery store could agree to purchase all of the apples it needs in a season from one farmer. We enter into a contract, quantity is uncertain, and so we say quantity is whatever we need, whatever we require. So a requirements contract, even though there's a missing quantity figure, the UCC will support the existence of that contract because the figure is based on what is the requirements. An output contract is also authorized by the UCC. And an output contract is an agreement by which the seller agrees to sell all or up to a stated amount of what the seller produces. The seller is going to give up the right to sell the goods elsewhere. So in an output contract, a farmer could agree to sell all of the apples it grows in one season to a grocery store. And the grocery store could agree to buy all of the apples that the farmer produces. So an output contract, again, missing quantity term, but still a valid contract under the UCC. When it comes to requirements and output contracts, again, the UCC is going to impose a good faith requirement. So you cannot enter into a requirement contract with the idea that you are going to have a very low amount of requirements. The actual quantity purchased or sold cannot be unreasonably disproportionate to the normal requirements or output. So again, that good faith requirement plays a huge role in this idea of what is requirement and what is output.